One of the most urgent tasks for our country is to decisively defeat the climate hysteria hoax.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta. It is Friday. This is the best day of the week, not just because the weekend is almost here, but because this is the day the Heartland Institute broadcasts the Climate Realism Show, episode number 198, if you are scoring at home. My name is Jim Lakely. I'm Executive Vice President of the Heartland Institute and the host of this program. The Heartland Institute is an organization that's been around for 42 years. We are known as the leading global think tank pushing back on climate alarmism. Heartland in this show bring you the data, the science, the truth that counters the climate alarmist narrative you've been fed every single day of your life. There is nothing else quite like the Climate Realism Show streaming anywhere. So I hope you will bring friends to view this live stream every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And also like, share, and subscribe. And be sure to leave comments underneath this video. We do read them. And all of these very simple actions help convince YouTube's mysterious algorithm to smile upon this program. And that gets the show in front of even more people. And as a reminder, big tech and the legacy media are not big fans of the way we cover climate and energy on this program. So Heartland's YouTube channel remains demonetized. So if you want to support this program, and I really hope you do, no matter where you're watching in the world, please visit heartland.org/TCRS. That's heartland.org/TCRS. And you can join other friends of this program who help bring the show to the world every single week. We also want to thank our streaming partners, as we do every episode: junkscience.com, CFACT, What's Up With That, the CO2 Coalition, and Heartland UK Europe. We have a big show. We're back in the saddle in our usual places. So let's get started. Today, we have with us, as usual, Anthony Watts. He's Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute and publisher of the world's most viewed website on climate change, What's Up With That. We have Sterling Burnett, the Archbishop of Rancherbury, whose day job is the director of the Arthur B. Robinson Center for Climate and Environmental Policy at the Heartland Institute.
But evidently opposing is Andy Singer.
Yep. We also have Linnea Lueken, Senior Fellow for Energy and Environment Policy at Heartland, and our wonderful producer extraordinaire, Andy Singer, behind the scenes, making sure everything looks and flows great. And joining us today for the first time, certainly not the last, as a special guest, is Angela Wheeler. Angela is Executive Director of the CO2 Coalition, who were the co-hosts of the 16th International Conference on Climate Change last week. She was also a speaker at that conference. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here as well. So we're going to get into a little bit of what you talked about and other people talked about that happened at the climate conference last week, which we streamed live on these channels. But before we do that, let's start off as we always do with our favorite segment, the crazy climate news of the week. Hit it, Andy. Thank you very much, Bill Nye. I've titled this one here in the sidebar there, Fly Me to the Loon. This comes from the Times of London. Headline, I quit as a pilot because climate change gave me sleepless nights. Let me read a little bit for everyone. As millions of us flew off for an Easter getaway, the pilot behind the controls may have been having second thoughts about how many of us really needed to be in the air. A small but growing number of pilots are stepping away from their six-figure salaries as concern grows that the aviation industry is unable or unwilling to stop its soaring carbon emissions. Joel Walker, an EasyJet pilot for 13 years, is the latest to join the ranks after struggling to reconcile his dream job with climate anxiety. Last month, he handed in his security pass at Luton Airport after being signed off on medical grounds due to severe stress and sleepless nights. Quote, There was this dawning realization that I might be complicit in something that is really irresponsible, he said. Walker has joined the group called Safe Landing, a community of concerned current and former aviation workers who advocate for an aviation fuel tax and frequent flyer levy to make flying more expensive. Safe Landing says increased taxes would reduce demand amongst the most polluting frequent flyers and enable sufficient investment in nascent technologies such as hydrogen-powered planes, sustainable aviation fuels, which could potentially be scaled up in the coming decades. All right, that's enough from that. And sure, that's exactly where all the money collected would go. There'd be no grift, right? Anthony, I think you're the one who pointed this out to us this week. And if a pilot has this much anxiety and over a crisis that isn't real, it's probably best that he has exited the friendly skies. Nope, you're on mute, Anthony. You just pulled a Jim.
Sorry about that. I'm used to coughing a little bit. Still dealing with the after effects, as many of us are, from travel last week. But as a pilot myself, before my hearing caused me to not be able to continue because I couldn't understand the tower, because those guys talk like auctioneers sometimes. I can say this is the biggest load of balderdash I've ever seen out of a pilot. Pilots are usually straight and narrow guys. They're focused on the mission. They're focused on, quality control, cockpit, keeping the cockpit sterile, all these things. And for this guy to go off on this tangent saying, well, I can't fly anymore because, I might be damaging the planet. I mean, really? This speaks to me like it's really something else. And he's just using this for an excuse. I don't know. Maybe there's something else in the background going on. But no pilot that I've ever known would talk like this. And certainly no pilot I've ever known would suggest that we have hydrogen-powered airplanes, because nothing bad could ever happen by using hydrogen in aviation, right? Remember the Hindenburg? Oh, my. Anyhow, it's just loony. That's all. I mean, fly to the loon, yeah, that's an exact apt metaphor, Jim.
Well, sorry, Sterling.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay. Well, and to one of our viewers who asked if my voice is back, yes, for the most part. Might have a little crack here and there, but I'm doing much better. That was like the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me, because I got sick when I got home after the conference, but while I was there, I felt fine. I just couldn't talk. It was terrible. Anyway, so that was very bad timing. But this is really kind of insane, because why does he think that a fuel tax would reduce frequent flyers? Why does he think frequent flyers are people who are flying for business and people who are wealthy enough to be able to fly all the time instead of driving? So why does he think that they would be impacted? Why doesn't he realize that it would reduce the poorer people from flying? People who fly, once every 3 years or something for a family vacation. That's who's going to be, restricted from flying if you make it more expensive. I have a really hard time taking these guys seriously or thinking that they're earnest about this, because I think that they have to know. They have to know that the only people who will be impacted by making flying more expensive are the people who can't afford it already.
You sure about that?
Yes, I am sure about that.
I've got several disparate thoughts on this story. My brother-in-law has his own business. He's a pilot. He flies both planes and helicopters. And I know from speaking with him and from other pilots that I know, look, that's a high stress job. I wouldn't want to have that job. So this guy's already under stress, and I acknowledge that. But I will say, if climate change, if the thoughts of climate change are keeping him up at night, it's probably good he grounded himself. I don't want him helming any airplane that I am on. I think his thing is a grift. I think you mentioned, Jim, that he got a medical leave from his company, right? He's getting paid not to fly now. He's sitting on the sidelines collecting that money and he's not having to do anything for it because he's so stressed and sick. And it's bad. Now, at least he didn't take the real loony climate stressed pilot option out and fly his plane into a mountain to reduce everyone's carbon emissions. He didn't do that, so I'll give him credit for that. But this has a grifter. And if he's not a grifter, he's just he's overly sensitive. For a pilot, not a good thing. I'm glad he's out of the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least we can take solace in the fact that chemtrails had nothing to do with this story. And I'll leave it there as an inside joke for the people on the show. All right. Let's move on to our second item here. I call it Green Gaming Blues. This comes from our friends in Canada from the CBC. The headline is Watershed Group hopes its online games inspire young to act on climate change. We've seen stories like this before. All right, let me read some for you. You might think teaching the next generation about climate change would require a visit to the forest or the ocean, but an environmental group is hoping to share some lessons through a new online game. Vanessa Leclerc, project leader of the Petitcodiac Watershed Alliance, says the games aim to teach children in Moncton and nearby communities how they can help fight climate change and reduce pollution. In the games, students create eco-friendly neighborhoods and learn how to make their own gardens, rain gardens, which absorb stormwater runoff from rooftops and driveways. They just called that a barrel at the bottom of the drain in my house when I was a kid, but oh well. Quote, a lot of the time you can feel kind of helpless in climate change. Like, what am I going to do on my own? It can give them a little bit more hope and certainty that what they're doing actually can make an impact. With the game called Great Green Neighborhood Showdown, which students play independently, players created contrasting neighborhoods, one that is eco-friendly and another that isn't. Players start with an empty neighborhood. The object is to build one eco-friendly neighborhood with solar panels, green roofs, vegetable gardens, buses, and parks. In the other, not so sustainable neighborhood, students can insert things such as litter, oil spills, construction zones, and large parking lots. All right, Linnea, that sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it? You're the gamer of the group here. Are you going to give this one a try?
You know what? They're targeting the same audience for like a Animal Crossing or any number of those like kind of cute little like home keeping, like tending your garden type games. There is an audience for that. Not really so much me. I played Animal Crossing when I was in middle school. Not so much now. But I do think it's funny though, because they're scaring these kids to death with the way that they teach them about climate change and stuff in school. They're hammering them with this stuff. It's all over unless the government makes huge sweeping changes to our entire economy and globally. And they say this over and over again to these kids to the point where they're just like in total despair, because they do feel like, well, I can't do anything about that. It's up to the world governments to do it. So now they're trying to like put a Band-Aid over this, mental illness that they've inflicted on these kids. It's kind of dark when you think about it too much. But it's the same old cringe. Yeah. As one of our commenters mentions, the like Captain Planet stuff is, it's along the same lines as that. It's whatever. It's like, have they not hit us hard enough on the education level, from television and movies? I can't remember the last time I saw a like modern TV sitcom or something that didn't have some kind of a climate change episode. It's everywhere all the time. Have they not done enough? Well, apparently not, because we're winning and we're going to talk about that later. But it's just kind of, I don't know, this kind of thing where they're doing like we've made a video game showing you how to build a rain garden is cute. I mean, that's not legal in California. So if they're in California, they can't gather, they can't collect rainwater. So good luck with that, I guess. But oh, well, I don't see this as particularly harmful. It's the base teaching that got them scared enough that they think they need a green game like this in the first place that's harmful.
Yeah, if I got a hold of a copy of that thing, I think I would hack it and change the title to Green Acres, where the whole goal of the game is to buy carbon credits from Mr. Haney. That would be the whole scheme of it. I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show Green Acres or not, but there was this character called Mr. Haney who would come around in his traveling wagon. He was basically a shyster, and so he'd be a perfect guy to buy carbon credits from in this game.
He's dating him. Anthony's dating himself.
Yeah, Anthony just raised the average age of our dedicated viewer about 15 more years. That's great. Angela, I want to go to you on this. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that, as Linnea had alluded to, it's like, you put an agenda first and then you try to make a product that people will like. It seems like it fails. It's a failing plan. It's not going to work.
Absolutely. Well, how would a child or a student respond when they're told there is no alternative viewpoint, that the science is settled, that there is a climate crisis and you're responsible for it? And that's where this anxiety is coming from. And yes, as Linnea said, it's really an atrocity, and parents need to go to their school boards and let them know that science is not being taught. And I don't know if you're ready to discuss my speech from the conference yet or not, but that's what it was about.
I would say that they're actually not blaming the children. They're having the children blame their parents. They're teaching the children that their parents and their grandparents are to blame for destroying the earth, and only they can save it. They're the earth saviors.
Well, that's a good point, but also in all the things that they do, like we just talked about with the carbon credits and not flying and making them change their lifestyle extraordinarily. So it is coming, but you're right. We ruined it. Now they've got to change their entire lifestyle to try to fix it, all based on lies.
Yeah, and we're going to be able to get into that more deeply later on in the show with Angela, because she did speak about this at the 16th International Conference on Climate Change last week. But let's move on to our next item here. I know, Andy, you finally found the game. I know he was looking for it for 10 minutes. He finally found it. There's some good footage of it. It's great. I know, he's killing me. All right, we do have a lot to get to. Let's move on. This is a big story. This was kind of a late insert into the show notes this week, and this is about the fake endangerment finding, which also ties into Lee Zeldin speaking at our climate conference last week. This was a big story. Headline from Fox News: unearthed emails expose how Obama-era EPA plotted massive energy regulations from day one. So yeah, follow the science. The Democrats are the party of science, right? No, they're the party of ideology and dogma over science. And this is big, and this will kind of lay some of that out. Reading from it: a government watchdog is accusing the Obama administration's Environmental Protection Agency of predetermining the legal basis for its climate framework. In an amicus filing before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Government Accountability and Oversight, a nonpartisan nonprofit, and Protect the Public's Trust, another government accountability watchdog, unearthed communications from inside the EPA in 2009. Those communications, the GAO argued, showed that the climate-minded officials treated Obama's endangerment finding as a foregone conclusion and later used it as the foundation for vehicle emission standards, power plant regulations, and permitting restrictions. In particular, GAO pointed to communications from Lisa Heinzerling, who served as the Climate Policy Counsel at EPA at the time. In a 2009 email, she claimed the right findings would create the legal mandate for regulation. Quote, "We expect to be able to issue a proposed finding of endangerment for greenhouse gases within the next 100 days, Heinzerling wrote on February 8th. Quote, "Within the same document, we expect to find that certain major categories of greenhouse gases, in particular motor vehicles, cause or contribute to air pollution, which endangers public health and welfare. An endangerment finding," she added, "will trigger regulatory obligations under the Clean Air Act." Her email was sent just 2 weeks after President Barack Obama's inauguration. And like I said, this ties into our climate conference last week with our opening keynote speaker, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. He said that we are vindicated. He said the repeal of the endangerment finding was vindicated. It was a triumphant speech. And this story that came out, I think, while we were at the conference, ratifies that. Sterling, let's start with you. I mean, they cooked the books here. It was a setup all along.
Color me shocked to find this out. You know, it reminds me of Casablanca, when the Nazi shuts down, the Nazi sympathizer shuts down gambling, and they rush out, and he said, "I'm shocked to find gambling is taking place here." And they rush out and they say, "You're winning, sir." He goes, "Oh, thank you very much." Obama told you in advance. He ran on shutting down coal and fossil fuels. He said, I believe it was a San Francisco Chronicle article, but I could be wrong about that. But he said, if you want to build a coal plant, try. You're going to bankrupt you. So he knew what he was going to do. And then it was just a matter of ginning up the justification. And this shows that they were working on that even before the so-called science was in. Like you say, this wasn't led by science. This was a predetermined political outcome. And they tried to pretty up the science to make it appear justified. We've challenged this, not just Heartland, but lots of organizations have challenged this. Court cases have gone on. The court has routinely upheld it as discretion of the EPA. After West Virginia v. EPA, however, there was hope that the endangerment filing would finally be overturned, because if there's a single major question in the United States, the control of carbon dioxide, the very air you exhale, is pretty major. It seems to me the EPA's got to find the justification in the actual law, where Congress sat down and said, "Yep, we want you to control people's breathing." That's what you got to do. Congress has said you must control people's breathing. Absent that, EPA had no authority.
Oh, Sterling got frozen again. There we go. Actually, Angela, I want to go to you. I mean, this is about basically, you write it down on a piece of paper, what you already wanted to happen, and then you declare carbon dioxide a pollutant, get to regulate it and control the entire economy. You're the executive director of the CO2 Coalition. Your viewpoints on carbon dioxide were quite a bit different than the Obama administration's.
Yes, and what we have to do is overturn Massachusetts versus EPA, where CO2 is considered a pollutant. They, as you just mentioned, there was no science behind that whatsoever. And so there's been part of that endangerment finding that has been changed, but the actual part with CO2 as a pollutant has not. And we have to, with the Clean Air Act, we have to overturn that. That's the only way we go forward with being able to free CO2. But yeah, so exactly. And this was all based on very much something that's very confusing, because, as you know, this comes back to the IPCC saying that CO2 is the primary driver of temperature. We can scientifically prove that is false. And so all of that being said, we have the science, we have the data to be able to overturn this. We now have an administration that has our ear, that will look at the data. And so we're just very hopeful that we're able to present this in the court, and that we are able to get this overturned.
Anthony, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, this reminds me a lot of what's been going on in climate science for the past couple of decades. You know, they are so absolutely convinced that CO2 is the whole problem. They come up with these modeling studies. You know, they've already figured out, yeah, CO2 is the problem. So we're going to come up with a modeling study that proves it. So they come up with this conclusion that fits the premise, as opposed to the other way around. But it really mirrors how science has been done in climate science the last few decades. And unlike Sterling, I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked at all. I think it's business as usual for these folks. And there's two factions in this whole thing. There's the people that want to regulate it, and then there's the people that want to save the planet. And they're both off their rockers in terms of how they are approaching this. The whole process is backwards. Science should lead and investigate first, and then come up with a conclusion. These folks are doing it exactly backwards, whether it's on the regulatory front or on the science front.
I guess sarcasm doesn't come through well over the computer because I was less than shocked, despite my protestations. I want to say this: the Obama's actions and the EPA's actions were attribution science. Were before attribution science was cool. We had a predetermined conclusion, and it was now just ginning up the evidence to justify our actions. It's circular reasoning. It's unscientific. It's not logical. It's purely political, and that's what consensus is all about. Purely political.
Yeah, we've told people for a long time. I mean, and this is why Lee Zeldin was justified in going through the process, and he went through all the steps that you have to go through, which coincidentally or not coincidentally is a lot more steps than it did for the Obama administration, just to declare for itself the power to declare carbon dioxide a pollutant when it is not a pollutant, and therefore the ability to regulate it under the Clean Air Act. That was just a declaration, and what this story actually proves is that was going to be their plan when they came into the administration before they even got inaugurated. And there were not going to be any studies to actually justify this. They were just going to declare the power to do so, and the courts unfortunately allowed them to do it for too long. And like you said, Angela, Massachusetts versus EPA is really the last. It's already a pretty rickety stool at this point, thank God. But that would be the last stool point.
Yeah, the whole process was damn the science, full speed ahead.
Yep. So, yep, excellent. All right, let's move on. We got a lot more to get to today. This is another pretty big story. This is well, we're going to find out. Is the World Bank going to be dumping their green agenda? This comes from an outlet called Climate Home News. Headline is U.S. pressure puts World Bank's climate plan at risk. We'll see. Says here, the World Bank's work to tackle climate change is under threat as the Trump administration pushes the lender to ditch its green targets and step up support for fossil fuel infrastructure in the developing world. With the World Bank's key climate policy framework set to expire in June, closed-door negotiations between shareholders and the bank's management over its successor have stalled, sources familiar with the discussions told Climate Home News. This throws into doubt the future direction of the world's largest provider of international climate funding to developing countries. First introduced in 2021, the Climate Change Action Plan has driven an expansion in the World Bank's funding for emission-cutting projects and support for vulnerable communities dealing with the growing impacts of climate change. The plan embedded climate considerations across the bank's lending practices and committed it to directing a defined share of its annual budget, now 45%, to projects with quote-unquote climate benefits.
Wow.
Since the plan was introduced, the World Bank's climate funding nearly doubled from $21 billion in 2021 to $39 billion in 2025. Again, this is where all the money is, folks, not on our side. Let me finish up here. That trajectory is now under threat. Since Donald Trump's return to the White House, the U.S., the bank's largest shareholder, has waged an aggressive campaign against its climate commitments. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Wednesday that the World Bank should abandon its, quote, distortionary climate finance target, and it says here in the story, claiming without evidence that it, quote, undermines efforts to reduce poverty and spur economic growth. Gotta love the media. One last bit. Quote, we welcome the coming expiration of the Climate Change Action Plan, and upon its long overdue expiration, expect the bank to immediately shift its myopic focus on climate, Bessent added at the World Bank spring meeting in Washington, D.C. this week. That's awesome. So anyway, Angela, what do you think? I mean, it is the World Bank. The idea, a lot of the green energy industry is all grift. You basically outlaw investment in fossil fuels, and where else is it going to go? Under this president and under this Treasury Secretary, they have a lot of influence on the World Bank to put an end to that nonsense.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's similar to, where Bill Gates came out and said, oh, maybe this wasn't so bad after all. But I think, I'm from Kansas. And so my term is, everyone said the jig is up. Okay, everybody's on to us. We're seeing this. So now, like this administration is boldly showing that this has all been a big lie. And so why should we take affordable, reliable energy away from Americans? And I think institutions like the World Bank will understand that and hopefully just abandon it and quietly walk away. That's the hope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone else here could weigh in, but it's like there's the idea that something it will continue forever until it doesn't, right? And for a lot of this stuff, it's when the money goes away, then whatever's happening with funded also goes away. And if you can pull the money out from under us, in other words, if the whole thing is like it's like a self-watering plant, it just keeps going and going. But if you can turn that cycle off, then the whole thing falls apart because it's not real. It's not real except for the money.
So two things. I believe you said, Jim, in the story, did they create this fund in 2021? Is that right?
I believe so. Let's look. I'll go back up in the notes. Yeah, the Climate Change Action Plan 2021. I think this investment, maybe that's what the new thing was called. I mean, this has been going on for a while.
It's been going on for a while, but the big investment came in 2021 under Biden. And what they did there, you said 45%. What's the World Bank? It was set up as an international bank, 5 different types of bodies underneath it, for one reason, just like the treasury, the Treasury was set up for one reason, not to do climate change, the World Bank was to help poor countries develop, not to control the climate, not to make sure they only develop in a way that doesn't impact the climate, because that's impossible, just to get them out of poverty. That's its sole reason for existence. Now, the U.S. is the biggest funder of the World Bank. This is the reason why they're in such a tizzy. Is the U.S. has outsized influence on what the World Bank does because we're the biggest funder. Trump could yank that money, and they would be out of business. So they're listening. And getting back to what Jim said is, this shows what a grift it is. Every day, I read headlines that say, green energy industry collapsing. Everyone's trying to get in their funding before the money goes out. But jobs are being laid off. Ooh, we're losing jobs. They're not going to build a factory they were going to build before. I'm told regularly that green energy is cheaper than other energy sources, that it can compete with fossil fuels. Then why is it going away as soon as federal money goes away? It was a lie 20 years ago when they said it. It's a lie today. It is a creature. Wind and solar energy, battery backup are holy creatures of government mandates and money. And when that money and mandates go away, it goes away. After 20, nearly 30 years of support, they've never ceased to be orphan industries. And when you hear, as they will say, it's cheaper than coal, it's cheaper than gas, it's cheaper than nuclear. Ask why nuclear plants haven't shut down due to lack of profitability. Why ask for shut down because of regulatory and mandates to support green energy, and ask why they will continue if that money is taken away, but green energy does not. If it can compete, it doesn't need that funding. It can't, and it dies without it.
You sit on a throne of lies.
Sterling, I disagree with you on one point. You said that these were holy mandates, holy creatures of government mandates. They're unholy creatures of government mandates. You need to get that right. And,
Yeah.
Well,
Archbishop, stay in your lane there.
I'll say this, when it comes to the World Bank, I really do think, despite what they're saying now, it's the finance companies and stuff that we're going to have the most uphill battle with, right? For the time being, not just because the grift has been so, lucrative for a lot of these companies, but also because, you've got this kind of like job category that popped up out of nowhere a couple decades ago, that where all these like finance guys have like a sustainability department. And so you have a bunch of people with sustainability in their like job title, and it's going to be hard to root them out. It's going to be really hard. There's all these people who, they don't really have like a science background or anything, but they found out when they were in college or right after they got out of college and went into business or something that sustainability is like a growth industry. So they got into it, and they're compelled by that to try to promote it as much as possible. They've really dug their roots in pretty deep, and I think that it's going to be kind of hard to get them out of it. I will say that the best chance of getting them out of it is getting these guys who have sustainability in their titles to change their LinkedIn profile to like artificial intelligence something, because that seems to be what's really driving a lot of the changes from the tech giants. But it's still, I think the biggest hurdle going forward is not necessarily even going to be to root it out from governments, but to root it out from the banking system.
Well, let me ask you, Linnea, you may have a different opinion than me, but I agree that they're embedded. But when the money and the mandates dry up, remember, these are creatures. These sustainability departments started because the government got into sustainability. The government got into mandating this stuff. And if there's anything that financiers know to do is they go where the money from government is. When the money from government goes away, I think they'll pivot away from funding this crap, because that's where they're going to go to wherever the government's going to be funding next, because they want to be on the ground floor of the grift.
Yeah, but you have to see that, like, for a lot of these people, this has become part of their identity, even outside of money, right? Like, that's the reason why all the DEI stuff was being pushed, and the like social justice stuff was being pushed in these big media companies and stuff. Wasn't necessarily because there was government support behind it, although that certainly helped, but because there was an ideological support behind it. So you can have companies like Disney or something losing millions and millions of dollars on different movies that they put out because they're trying to push a narrative, and they don't mind because they have an ideological backup that banks were funding, basically, in order for them to push that stuff. I think that the money side will dry up, but these guys aren't going anywhere. They're going to keep pushing it. That's why I'm not saying that they're never going to go away. I'm saying that it's going to take a lot more than just having like a couple years of good Republican governance.
I guess,
well, that's a strong term, but less favorable government conditions for them in order to root it out.
I guess I see it a different way. I just think that the presidents of those organizations, look, Jeff Bezos is no longer funding. He fired 2/3 of the Washington Post climate staff. Climate reporting is down in a single year. My feeling is that when the CEOs of banks, they're all pulling out of all the green grift, net zero alliances they were part of, all those heads of sustainability, they will go the way of the Washington Post climate reporters if they can't adapt, because their CEOs aren't going to allow their companies to not make money on the next big grift and to keep pushback. That's just my thought.
Yeah. Angela, did you have something else to get in here? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Amazon. They have an entire webpage built around their climate pledge. And if you've ever ordered anything from Amazon, you have the no carbon, the lower CO2 option. And I'm always wanting to request to them that I get the higher CO2 option, but it hasn't happened yet. But it's unbelievable to me. And that's going to take a long time for them to back away from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can wrap it up here. Don't put that up just yet. There we go. Yeah, got some fan mail we're going to go over here. But look, so-called green energy, renewable energy, it's not reliable enough. It's not scalable enough to actually work on any grand scale. Anybody with 2 eyes and ears and watches this show knows that to be true. The only way investment in that technology on a broad scale makes sense is if governments mandate the investment into it. And that is it. And once governments stop mandating that, or Donald Trump and Scott Bessent putting pressure on the World Bank to stop putting their thumb heavily on the scale in that favor, it will end. And I just wanted to say one last thing, because it bothered me in this story that Scott Bessent said he claimed, quote unquote, without evidence, that green investment, quote, undermines efforts to reduce poverty and spur economic growth. Without evidence. The evidence, it's self-evident. If you are trying to make developing countries in Africa raise their standard of living through solar panels and windmills, you are undermining efforts to reduce poverty and spur economic growth. Because the only way out of poverty and the only way to spur real economic growth is through the use of fossil fuels for energy and electricity. Period. You cannot do it with what the green weenies want us to do globally. That is, you don't need evidence. You need eyes. You need to understand basic economics.
And I know we've talked about this, but with the data centers, I think one of the best things that has happened is the data centers, because they know they could not get their energy from wind and solar.
Exactly.
And so this has just made it so obvious. And so that's one good thing that came from that.
For sure. All right. Thank you very much. I think that was a wonderful examination of that story. And we're going to get into our main topic today, kind of talking a little bit more about the climate conference that CO2 Coalition was co-host with the Heartland Institute and CFACT, and what's up with that in Washington, D.C. last week. There were some incidents. There was an interruption of our panel on bringing youth into the climate realism fold. In other words, deprogramming their alarmist brains. We're going to get to that in a minute as well. But I also wanted to share a little bit of fan mail that I got from somebody who watched the conference. Let's see if we could bring that up. There we go. So Steve, I'm not going to share your last name, Steve. I'm also not going to share your email address because that would be doxing and that would be wrong. So I'm not going to do that. But this came into my personal email account, which I can say out loud because it's public. It's on Heartland's website. It's jlakely@heartland.org. That's where this person found me. And he said, "What?" in the subject line. "You don't believe in climate change? You are a stupid, uneducated piece of crap moron. Idiots like you are why humanity was so stupid that it pooped in its own bed."
Well,
all right,
gosh,
Steve.
Jim.
I've just made you a star. That actually made my week. I really appreciate that very much. So thank you, Steve, for that.
What's funny is this is so typical of just about every email any of us ever receive from people on the other side. It's all, these guys put the Archbishop of Canterbury to shame. They do a much better job of ranting than Sterling could ever do. And, it's always the same. You're stupid. You're anti, science. You're on the take of big oil. Any of those things are almost always in the process of their communications. They just never do anything beyond scream and yell and rant. They never engage in a factual, truthful way.
Ad hominem is their foundation.
Yeah,
I love it when they say you don't believe in climate change. Well, yes, I believe in climate change. Climate is always changing.
We had a whole conference.
I don't believe it. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you're right. Climate's always changing, and we had a whole conference that said that.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Well, we had we have clips of it. We have clips of the people who disrupted our conference on the last afternoon, and the speakers up on stage said, it's a shame they didn't stick around and listen a little bit more. They would have learned something and maybe not have been so angry and ignorant. But that's what you get. We do the best we can. You can lead a horse to water, can't make them drink. But so let's get into a little bit of the recap here of the conference. And Angela, I wanted to talk specifically to get started about what you had talked about. You can, everybody watching and listening to this show can go to heartland.org. The first two features on the webpage will bring you to all of the coverage that we have. All the videos are there. We are in the process with Andy and others to be cutting those up into more into easier bites. You can get all of the presentations plus most of the PowerPoints if you want them. as we move along. It takes some time, but be patient. But you can go to heartland.org and get right over there. But Angela, your presentation was very interesting. It was titled "The State of Science Education in America: Restoring the Scientific Method." Why don't you take this opportunity to kind of summarize your presentation and why you thought that was an important one to give the audience?
Sure. I think that people are typically pretty amazed when I would say restoring the scientific method, because they say, what do you mean restoring the scientific method? But in 2013, our federal government decided that we should have standards for science, as we did for math and Common Core. And so they offered next generation science standards. So states had the option to opt in or not. But as of now, 49 states have opted in to next generation science standards. And what they didn't realize is that the standards removed the traditional scientific method. There is no traditional scientific method in those standards. So here we are, that was 2013, here we are 2026, and we wonder, why do all of these students and these young adults think that there's a climate crisis and that it's settled? It's because they have not been taught to think critically. They think that science is settled. They believe that science is consensus. And that's problematic. And that was the core of my speech, was to just say that we have full on indoctrination, and science is not the topic that you would think we would have indoctrination. It's supposed to be open discourse. It's supposed to be open communication and testing everything. And we do not have that in schools in America, and most people don't know that.
Well, it's not an output. Science is a process, and the process is trying to discover. You try and you have a phenomena you want to explain that we don't understand, and you try and explain it through the scientific method. You propose a hypothesis.
Yep.
Nope, Sterling got frozen again.
Terrible thing that deep state.
I've got everything else turned off, so this is all spectrum. This is all spectrum. You propose a hypothesis, and then you have the test. You say, my theory makes these predictions, and the more those predictions are coming true, you test it, the more likely it is to be right. But the less those predictions are coming true, the less likely it is to be right. And when you test the climate alarm narrative against that, it's very unlikely to be right, because all of its predictions are wrong. And yet, like you say, they jettisoned the scientific method. They made it about results, the things that we supposedly know in consensus, agreement. Scientists, in the next generation science standards, it talks about agreement. What's important is agreement. No, it's not. That's not what's important.
Exactly.
What's important is results that are proven.
Yes, and so students are really being taught what to think instead of how to think.
That's right.
And if you rely on models and you rely on consensus, then you can lead them into thinking anything. And we know that we've led them to think that there's a climate crisis, and that is false.
And it's not, Angela, it's not as if some of the basic physics of the way the atmosphere works and greenhouse gases work, and particularly because you're with the CO2 Coalition, the ability of carbon dioxide to its warming capacity or its warming ability decreases as it increases in the atmosphere. So while there may be quite a bit of warming from, say, 100 parts per million to 300 parts per million, the amount of warming from 300 to 400 is a lot lower. The amount from 400 to 800 is even lower than that. To almost be insignificant. That is not a difficult concept to teach a middle schooler. But if you tell them the truth about carbon dioxide, that it is the gas of life, that it is not a pollutant, that it is not causing runaway global warming with all of these potential and far away and modeled accelerating effects, that is not, if you tell them that, then the entire indoctrination of global warming is it's your fault and we're ruining the planet goes away.
Yeah, and that it's plant food, by the way.
We're eating better than ever before in history in part because of CO2. I want to put Angela's presentation in context. We had this panel. What was the panel? The biggest challenges that remain going forward on climate change. And she saw education as her top issue. And I think she's right.
Yeah. Anthony, you're going to jump in there?
Oh, sorry. Oh, well, if you don't mind me, one of the things that I have often say to people, even if we are able to overturn Massachusetts versus EPA, which would be not a miracle, but would be wonderful, we still have to unindoctrinate a couple of generations of people. We have to show them the truth. And the one thing that I feel very hopeful about is that we do have truth on our side. We have data and science and truth. And when people are presented the facts, if they're willing to consider it, that's when we'll win.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anthony,
and that's what the youth panel was kind of aimed towards too, right? Like, how do we undo some of that? And I really think that part of that is that the alarmists themselves are undoing some of that because they've really overplayed their hand. And I can't remember who it was that made this commentary, and it's killing me that I cannot remember whose talk at our conference it was that made this point. But we really have like Anthony Fauci to thank for the current unwinding. Who was it that
was Mark Morano?
That was Mark Morano. That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anthony Fauci to thank for the unwinding of people's kind of compulsive belief in the establishment, the scientific establishment, right? Because we all saw that they were just like making stuff up as they went along in order to pursue a particular political narrative that they wanted. Masks work, masks don't work. It all just depended on what they wanted the people to do. And I think that really woke a lot of people up. Maybe not as many young people as we would like, but I think that the suffering that they underwent in school and stuff over that time period also helped to kind of make them realize, like, okay, the authorities don't exactly have my best interests in mind. Maybe I should take another look at what they're telling me.
I think Mark Morano is the one that brought up Anthony Fauci as calling him the biggest destroyer of climate alarm.
Yeah, I'm going to take this opportunity to kind of go around the horn and talk a little bit more broadly about maybe some of the favorite parts and things that people should be looking for, at least in their own personal opinion, when they go to climateconference.heartland.org or just heartland.org and check out the stuff. Anthony, you gave a wonderful presentation. You can't pick your own presentation, but was there part of the conference that you really would recommend to people that really stuck out to you?
I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
Is there a part of the conference that not including your own presentation, which is people should check out, but was there a part or a presentation of the conference that you would recommend people check out because you really found a lot of value?
Well, yeah. First of all, I really enjoyed the disruption because it just puts their silliness on display, but that's irrelevant to the whole mission of the conference. But I think that the presentation that was done by our Nobel physicist, Dr. Clauser, was really interesting. Even though it went a little bit long and it was technically deep, he basically showed how the pea under the thimble, kept getting switched in the way that they were doing science. And we've had a series of posts on WhatsApp with that, talking about that particular presentation. And so I think that was probably the big standout for me.
Angela, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm very biased. Dr. Clauser is on our board. And so, but I was going to say the same. Dr. Happer, Dr. Clauser, Jim Steele, who's also one of our board directors, they brought the science. And I mean, a lot of people brought the science, but they brought the science. And that is exactly what we need. And then also I just want to say hope. I looked around that room and I saw the hope with everyone there that we can beat this. and then we'll have to move on to the next power grab and the next thing. But we're close to really showing everyone that there's no climate crisis. And then, like Linnea was talking about with the anxiety, then we will move beyond that.
Yeah, Sterling.
Well, everyone's said Clouser, so I won't repeat that. I thought he was president. It was great. I thought the best thing about his presentation was how he used their own words to contradict what people are saying that they say. That they undermine their own theory, their own beliefs with their own words. Well, I love the youth panel. I was, behind setting that one up. I think that's just critically important. Unfortunately, as a moderator for a number of panels, I couldn't be in all the panels, so I didn't see everyone. But I always think Mark Morano's presentations are fantastic. I thought Anthony's presentation was fantastic. They bring the sort of the history of this scam into light and expose one thing after the other, how they were wrong here, and how they persist in the same wrong beliefs. And they do it in an entertaining way. The best takeaway from the conference for me personally was the enthusiasm that I saw at the conference. Everybody was joyful. Everybody thought, they said a resurgence, that some of them said, oh, there's a resurgence of skepticism. As I said once, I'd like to know when the first surge was, because I didn't know we had that period of time where we were winning before. But we're winning now, and everybody's happy about it. And that showed at the conference. So my 2 cents.
Yeah, that was kind of the same perspective that I came away with. I was very heartened by the number of people who came up to me, and I apologize. Anyone who's watching who was there and came up to me and talked to me, and I kind of just had to smile and nod because I could not whistle out a word because my voice was just gone. But I did enjoy talking to all of you, and all of the enthusiasm, and people were so heartened and glad by the amount of scientific rigor that we had represented there, as well as, policymakers, all sorts of stuff. I like Jason Isaac's presentation. I also liked to counterbalance our extreme and merited optimism. I always appreciate Steve Malloy's panels, and I was kind of joking, man, you'd think that the victory was won already, except then you go to Steve's panel and it's kind of like keeping our feet on the ground and our head out of the clouds a little bit, because he's like, look, this can all fall back again if we don't keep up the momentum here and get some really good and important, tactical victories at the judicial level, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that balance at the conference was really good.
Yeah, Steve's a frequent guest on this program. We love him, and he's kind of the Prince of Darkness on some of this stuff as we try to get in a good mood. He brings us back to reality on that sort of stuff.
But he's right,
he's right,
totally right. If we didn't have him, we'd be in trouble, I think.
For sure. In fact, that's why he won the Dauntless Purveyor of Climate Truth Award from the co-host CFAC, as a matter of fact. So congratulations to Steve on that. Nobody else here said it. It's in our thumbnail. I'm going to say it. I think Lee Zeldin, leading off the entire conference, the sitting administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency, coming to speak to us, to obviously a friendly audience, and to tell the audience, you've been vindicated. I've been vindicated. CO2 is not a pollutant. The endangerment finding was BS. And we are proud that we went through the steps to take care of it. And he said, you should celebrate. And we did celebrate. He got a standing ovation when he got on the stage. He got an even louder standing ovation when he left the stage. We were very honored and pleased to have Lee Zeldin come to the most prominent climate conference for people who do not believe humans are causing a crisis. The only climate conference, frankly, where you will have real scientists presenting real science to not just people in the hall who know this stuff because they're also scientists, but in ways that are absorbable by the masses. It's streamed, thousands and thousands of views. I think it's a tribute to the way we've all put on this conference together, the CO2 Coalition, CFAC, the Heartland Institute. What's up with that? That Lee Zeldin would be, was honored to come and kick the whole thing off. And the thing that pleases me so much as the Director of Communications and Executive Vice President of Heartland is that it drove the media crazy. And they had to write stories. The New York Times had to write a story. AP had to write a story. The Guardian, it made global news. It was fantastic. It was the perfect way to kick it off. And I will also just, I'm going to play two videos here for us in a minute, but I will also reiterate what everyone else on this show has said today. The sense of joy. This is our 16th conference. Sometimes the mood is not quite as joyous. It's a little dour because, as Sterling just said, if this is a resurgence, when was the first surge? We haven't had it. But so there was palpable joy. There were lots of smiles. But as Linnea pointed out, and we all know, there's no permanent victory in politics. You have to keep fighting and fighting and fighting, which we will continue to do. And as you said, Angela, we have the science on our side, and that is a huge advantage. But it's nice to have our side, kind of at the forefront right now for as long as it may last.
And to be recognized, as you say, to be recognized by Zeldin. I walked out of there going, gosh, it's nice that he vindicates all of our work for 30 years now. I wanted to say, Jim, I sort of thought you were going to violate your own rule and tout the live climate realism show that we did at the conference. I thought that came off pretty well. So,
well, somebody had to say it. I was hoping somebody would say it, but yes, the live version of our show on stage was pretty fun. That was really great. All right, we're going to get to Q&A here in a minute. Let me just play. So I mentioned before, and I promised these videos that we were protested. I think the organization was something called Climate Defiance. They entered the ballroom for that breakout session on how to bring youth into the climate realism fold. Our first clip, this is from the phone of Guardian reporter Darna Noor, who says she was totally unaware, leftist communist publication. She was totally unaware this was going to happen, she said. All right, let's play that video, please, Andy. Protest.
Or underneath your saying green. Oh my God, that's so smart. Everywhere and everyone is that's where there's no critical consensus on if you bring I didn't know you could ignore science. It's so smart. I can't believe I never thought of it.
It's Greg Rucker, Will Happer. Out he goes. Now, I just want to say here, the person escorting that young man out is 86-year-old physicist Will Happer. That guy should not be sharing that video on social media. He got manhandled by an 86-year-old man. That's pretty embarrassing. So
yeah, Chris Martz commented on Twitter, "What kind of a wuss do you have to be to get thrown out of a conference by an 86-year-old guy?"
Yes. So anyway, they try to come in and have some fun. And this next clip I'm going to play real quick. Anthony, you may want to mention something here. I see in the notes that you might want to do something. But here's the second one. This is the highlight clip somebody on the left put together of the entire incident.
While they're getting that set up, I have an announcement to make. We have brochures for the Will Happer Security Company on the tables outside. We had them made up during the time it took for this panel to happen. So his motto is that he takes direct action against soy boys who interrupt smart people.
Oh my gosh, so ridiculous.
All right. Well, so again, thank you. Let's have a round of applause for the entire panel for this.
I'm speaking. You are fake news, quite frankly.
Hey, I know that guy.
Yeah, I know that guy.
You're a total disgrace. Total disgrace.
This is when you know. Oh. This is when you know you're winning. This is when you know that you're winning. freaks. Thanks, guys. Who are those losers?
Those losers are Climate Defiance, and as they can see, it didn't dampen our spirits. That panel was Emma Arns from CFAC. That was Lucy Biggers right there. Annika Sweetland was also there. Linnea was on that panel. Her voice was gone. I had to speak for her. So it was a youth panel with this old man up there in the beginning. and also the great Chris Martz, who Chris Martz, by the way, gave a fantastic keynote presentation at the final dinner about temperature across and weather. You must see that one. That was one of my favorite presentations. Sorry,
yeah,
Andrew,
it was really fun.
No, if you want to know who funds climate defiance, you can go to Influence Watch, and you can find out who funds them, and that's good information to know.
All right, maybe Andy will do that. Well, go through the Q&A. But yeah, Anthony, you said you wanted maybe to mention some breaking news. Yep.
Yes, I just got word that a Supreme Court decision was handed down in the case of Chevron USA versus Plaquemines Parish in Louisiana. Basically, this lawsuit was about the fact that some activists got a hold of these people in this parish in Louisiana and decided to push a lawsuit saying that because Chevron made aviation fuel during World War II, it caused a whole kickoff of climate disaster and damage and everything. And it's been going on for over a year now. And finally, there was a ruling today, and the ruling basically threw it out, and Justice Thomas delivered the opinion of the court, and I'm going to read it to you. Congress has long authorized federal officers and their agents to remove suits brought against them in state court to federal court. The federal officer removal statute authorizes an officer or person acting under that officer to remove state suits for relating to any act under color of such office and so forth. Chevron argued that the suit was removable because it implicates Chevron's crude oil production during the Second World War, when Chevron was also refining crude oil into aviation gasoline for the U.S. military. No party disputes that they did that. We thus decide only whether the suit, which implicates Chevron's wartime production of crude oil, relates to Chevron's wartime aviation gasoline refining for the military. We hold that it does. Basically, they threw the whole lawsuit out, which is just another win that we're getting in the whole climate arena. These lawsuits that these people keep coming up with are beyond ridiculous. I mean, imagine going back to World War II and saying, because Chevron made avgas to keep, our allies and our country safe from the Nazis, the climate damage was terrible. And so therefore we have to choose Chevron. What kind of whack jobs do you have to be to come up with this idea in the first place?
Anthony, let me ask you, did they throw out the lawsuit or did they just remove it to federal court? I thought they removed it to federal court.
Well, I can't be clear on that based on my reading right now. I'm sure that'll shake out, but in any event, they lost at the Supreme Court, and that's the big deal.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, you know where you will not lose? You will not lose by visiting the sponsor of this program, and that is Advisor Metals. If you listen to a lot of conservative shows, you hear tons of pitches for buying gold and silver and other precious metals. There are a ton of companies out there, but we want to tell you why you should trust our sponsor, Advisor Metals, and that's the man who runs the company, and his name is Ira Bershatsky. Ira is the managing member of Advisor Metals, and he doesn't employ the high-pressure tactics or deceptive marketing ploys you get from many in big gold. He also doesn't deal in so-called rare coins. When you buy gold and other precious metals from Advisor Metals, you're dealing in quality bullion, and that is so much better for you when you want to liquidate this very valuable physical asset. And when you buy from Advisor Metals, you will have that investment sent discreetly and directly to your home. I also want to mention that Ira is advertising on our program because he is an America First patriot. He does not donate to Democrats or organizations like Climate Defiance. He refuses to work with the proxies of the Chinese Communist Party, and he, like us, abhors the machinations and schemes of the World Economic Forum, and I would imagine also the lending practices of the World Bank. So we are proud to have Ira and Advisor Metals as a sponsor. So if you want to diversify your portfolio, or if you want to back up your IRA with real physical bullion of precious metals, go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. You can leave your information there, and Ira will make the process very easy for you. Go to climaterealismshow.com/metals, and be sure to tell them who sent you, because that helps this show while you're helping your financial future. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We are ready now for Q&A. Take it away, Linnea.
I'm going to start it off with this.
Oops.
Oh, I was taken out of the chat. I'm going to start with this really brief answer to a question that has nothing to do with the stream, which is from Paula Brown, who says, "What's Animal Crossing?" Animal Crossing is a Nintendo game. It's not anything nefarious. It's just a Nintendo game. Chris, okay. What is going on with our layouts here? Chris Nisbet says, the eco zone will need to cover 100% of the land with solar panels, just have no electricity at nighttime. Do the batteries go in the dirty zone in that game? I would assume so. I think they just kind of like magically generate. We'll move on here. Let's see. Okay. This is from Climate Bell. I'm going to pitch it to whoever wants this one. The IPCC will never pull the plug on their grift. After 33 years, they're still fumbling the ball of uncertainty when it is a deterministic computation. Is this incompetence or corruption? Why not both?
Yeah, why not both?
Why not both?
Since Anthony's not here, I'll give my thoughts. I'm not convinced the IPCC will be around in another decade as a body. Remember, we pulled out of the UNFCCC. That's the one that funds most of it. Other countries are stepping away from their commitments. If they keep having conferences like they did at Belém, where they come out with nothing and they are embarrassed, I think in a decade, even if they have conferences, half the countries won't show up. It'll be a joke. No one will cover it. And when the coverage stops, the IPCC ceases to have a reason for existence, because they've never gotten. Some of the science is pretty good. Some of the science in the large documents is pretty good. But their summary for policymakers are written by policymakers for policymakers and have always been politicized and often don't reflect the underlying science in the reports.
Absolutely. Anthony, do you have anything to add to this one?
No, actually, I don't. I've been reading up on this. I apologize. Been reading up on this lawsuit thing, so I missed most of that.
That's all right. Okay. We do have a little bit of a critic in the audience, so I want to bring up their comment. Ms. Blue Ocean says, "Breaking news: the Heartland Institute are the think tank of human extinction." I think. I mean, I'm gonna assume that this person is earnest and they're not just trolling. But I think you'll find that even your IPCC doesn't believe the stuff that you're saying to the extent that you're claiming it. In addition, you also say, okay. Question, are you cheering this on? The U.S. Senate approves a bill to allow mining near the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. I don't know. I would have to read up on that. Sterling?
Well, I'd have to see the bill. I've read my Constitution. Have you seen anywhere in the Constitution where the federal government is allowed to set up wilderness areas? I haven't seen it. I don't see the words in the Constitution. As far as mining, if it can be done safely, especially if it's rare earth mining, minerals that we need for national security, I think that we have to go about it. But I haven't seen the bill, so I'm not going to say I'm cheering it on. I see her stream. She's got a stream of comments, look, we are the group that's in favor of human prosperity, not extinction. The policies that she promotes would lead to extinction, would lead to less food, billions of people dying of hunger. They're already in energy poverty, more people dying from airborne illnesses, indoor airborne illnesses, as they burn wood and dung rather than rely on electricity from clean plants. she's the one on the side of extinction, as are many climate alarmists who are really more about population control than they are about protecting the environment.
I also strongly doubt that this individual has ever read any of the like the IPCC AR6 report or anything like it. But they did say that they thought that the IPCC is too conservative. So maybe they're just anti-science themselves and aren't interested in data anyway.
Well, one thing I'd like to say to Miss Blue Ocean, when I talk to people at conventions that we attend, that don't want to have a discussion, they just want to preach at us, and I say, you may, if this is your religion, and you tell me this is your religion, I'll respect that. You have a right to your religion, but you cannot tell me it's science, because your arguments are not based in science.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah.
So we have a question. Oh, Anthony, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I want to address this lady, Miss Blue Ocean. You're saying that we're killing the planet. Have you looked around at all, other than just simply reading headlines? If you go back and look at history, and you look at what's been happening to the planet in the last 100 years, you would find, if you bothered to read history, that we are in a much cleaner state than we ever were. We had the Environmental Protection Agency formed in 1970 because things like Lake Erie were catching fire due to pollution on the top of the surface of the water. Things like that. We had smog everywhere in Los Angeles, Chicago, New York. We were breathing dirty air. We were drinking dirty water. Those things have all been solved. And we are living in a much cleaner time than we ever had in the past. And the fact that it's gotten a little warmer due to some increased carbon dioxide, well, boo-hoo. We are looking at agricultural productivity that has skyrocketed. We are looking at human health that has gotten way better. And the fact is that cold kills more people than warmth when you look at studies like what come out of the Lancet. Yeah. We are not living in a time of destruction of our planet. We are living in a golden age. So get with the program.
And beyond the benefits of all this for human health and welfare, we're richer than ever. We have fewer people dying of hunger than ever. We have fewer people dying from weather-related events. The Earth itself is greening. It's benefiting. The expansion of the greening of the Earth is remarkable. And if she doesn't acknowledge that, then she really doesn't follow the science.
Yep.
All right. Got a question here from Walter Jakubowski. Sorry, Walter, I always mess you up. Who says, what email address do we send our fan mail to?
You can send it to me. That's fine.
The Heartland Institute at gmail.com.
There you go.
Okay. There was Andy. Thank you, Andy. All right. Or you can send it to Jim, whatever you want to do. All right. Wheelman says, I suggest all to see if you can bring on Dr. John Robson for an interview, please. I don't know who that is, so I don't. Angela, do you know?
Nope.
He runs a website called Climate Discussion Nexus.
Oh.
Okay. Alrighty. It is I too says, Jim, you idiot, you don't believe in climate change. I think we're going to make that a tagline of the show.
It could be. I do believe in climate change, and that actually has no relation to whether or not I'm an idiot. That's a completely separate question.
It reminds me of the Wizard of Oz with the Cowardly Lion. I do believe in climate change. I do believe in climate change.
Everybody knows you never go full retard.
All right.
My husband's gonna love that.
All right. So Mike Gattuso says, how do we get schools to change what they teach? How many good textbooks are available? How do we flood the market and block out the stupid? Angela?
Well, that's an excellent point. And one good thing is that a lot of the textbooks are going digital now. It used to take sometimes a decade to try to make a change in a textbook. Now we don't have that problem. Now I do realize that the school boards have to vote on it and we go through that process, but we do have more opportunities. And so we do need to be reaching out to school boards and we're actually putting together some programs right now at the CO2 Coalition so that we can be reaching out from the youngest level to stop this indoctrination.
Yeah. Heartland and our allies have testified in different states on their because typically school boards don't just willy-nilly get to choose the books. Their state education agencies decide what's acceptable, and we've testified on textbooks in those states. We also, and I'm sure Angela has done this as well, and CFAC certainly does this, we've sent materials directly to the schools. Climate at a Glance was sent to educators, 7,000 educators around the country. Why scientists disagree was sent to over 200,000. So you try and get to them directly, circumvent the bureaucracy. Not everyone uses our material. Some people throw it away, but others have written us back saying nice things about what we've gotten, and they wouldn't have known that, they wouldn't have been able to supply that had we not provided it.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Oh, and one thing, if you don't mind me noting real quick, that we attended six homeschool conferences last year, and we're attending 3 this year, plus 2 charter school conferences. And we offer our materials at no cost to homeschool groups and also to schools that are all donor funded. And that's one way we're getting our materials. They all have lesson plans written by Dr. Sharon Camp. They're very comprehensive. And that's another way, because the homeschool families, they are taking this into their own hands. They don't want their children to be indoctrinated. And so we're making sure that they get the correct scientific based materials.
Very good. Yeah, you guys have done great work on that over the years. Go to CO2Coalition.org. You can get more information.
Absolutely. All righty. Let's see. Tech has kind of a complicated question, but I'm going to see if anyone can do it. Can someone summarize Dr. Happer's energy imbalance argument?
That takes more time than we have. I don't really think I can go through that.
But you can.
We are not able to do it, no. But you can go to the climateconference.heartland.org, and you can see the whole Will Happer presentation for yourself. No summary needed.
And at CO2 Coalition.org, they also have kind of like summary versions of a lot of Dr. Happer's papers and stuff. So that would be a good place to look as well. All righty. Now, and again from Jay Wester says, is there a site with a quick sum up of the most important scientific data that disproves climate alarmists? Anthony?
Yes. Go to, you got 2 websites to choose from. You've got climateataglance.com, which has all the different arguments that we have laid out one by one with the science, with hard data. And you can use that to dispute almost anything they say. That's number 1. Number 2, climaterealism.com, where every day we dispute some crazy story in the media where they're making grand claims about, the earth is falling, or the sky is falling, the earth is burning up, all this kind of stuff. So use those 2 resources. And of course, my own website, What's Up With That, where we've got lots of stuff going on multiple times a day. Those 3 resources are your best bet for pushing back on any climate alarmism. And particularly if you cite What's Up With That, that will make them crazy. So go do that.
Also, I should note that we have an excellent publication called Challenging Net Zero with Science.
Realist. And she doesn't get paid by the fossil fuel industry. Neither do we. I'm sorry, did I blink out again? I'm saying that we have something in common found with Miss Blue Ocean. She says she's a climate realist and she doesn't get paid by the fossil fuel industry. Neither do we. Second, I would say Climate at a Glance is probably the best quick source for this stuff. But if you want really, really detailed, lengthy examinations of climate science from a realist perspective, peer-reviewed, hundreds, if not thousands of footnotes, go to Climate Change Reconsidered, the series of books called Climate Change Reconsidered that are on the internet.
Sorry about that, Angela. I think Sterling's stuff got kind of lagged there. But what were you saying?
Oh, sure. No, we have a report called Challenging Net Zero with Science. and it's very it's got the deep science, but it's laid out in a way that's easy to understand. And so that's at co2coalition.org. And there's of course many other things. We have things on methane and nitrous oxide, and there's so many resources, but a great place to start is challenging net zero with science.
Alrighty, thank you very much. Oh, a good question from our friend Luke, who says, what are your thoughts on Elon Musk and Tesla or SpaceX bringing technology and manufacturing that otherwise would be made in China to the United States? It seems like Musk's companies are a positive for the United States. Yeah, I would agree with that. And I also would say that anything that makes it less likely that products that we use are being made with slave labor is a very good thing.
Agreed.
Sterling, do you have any comments on this one?
Well, I've long had mixed feelings about Musk. The idea that we need to subsidize electric vehicles through a tax credit, I thought was stupid, and through carbon credit sales. He made a lot of money on that. That's great for him. And for the wealthy people that were subsidized, most people who drive electric vehicles aren't in the lowest 2 quintiles of income. The other thing is he does a lot of contract work. And to the extent that he does contract work, like all of his SpaceX stuff, it's pay for play. He has to produce. And by gosh, he produces like nobody else in satellites, in space travel. He's the man, and I've got to admire him for that. Anything that gets us, as Linnea said, anything that weeds us off Chinese-dependent technology, 100% in favor.
Absolutely. And a question from Bogus, who says, was the disruption the only thing the leftist reporter posted online or in their publication? If so, they definitely lied about not knowing in advance. Jim?
I only saw it on the reporter's X account, Twitter account, which actually isn't followed by that many people, to be honest. So I didn't see that they did a story on it. I mean, look, she was in the room. She got up. She put her phone up. I mean, that happens. She had nothing to do with it. Had no idea who those people were.
I have to tell you something awesome, though. So they actually put a picture of our banner, which is good news. There is no climate crisis. They had a picture of our stress ball that said, don't stress, there is no climate crisis. And our little plate with lifesavers with our sign that said CO2 is a lifesaver. So we got a lot of attention showing some of the swag that we brought, and that made us really happy.
Certainly they had their own people there filming, because I helped block the filming. I started blocking the filming when she was holding up her camera trying to film, and she's having to get around my hands going up to block it. At first I thought when they stood up, I thought it was a gimmick that Lucy was doing. I thought it was part of her presentation. And once I didn't realize it wasn't until the filming started, and I tried to block that. And then when the second protester came out, I just stood in front of her and walked her out.
Yeah, there's a little bit more information about this I could share. I don't think it's really worth it doing it right now, but I have some information in reserve just in case we need it. That's all I'm going to say.
But wouldn't it be great if they were really there to actually learn something? Wouldn't that be great? But we know that they're not.
We know, and we get people. We just put Ms. Blue Ocean up here. We get people that don't agree with our viewpoints on these topics that show up to this show. We have more than 1,000 people watching this live stream today, which is pretty amazing. And we put their questions up and we answer them. We want to engage in a debate. There's very few on the left that want to engage in any debate, and there's a reason for that. And as you mentioned it, Angela, the science is on our side, so they're left with very few places to perch.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the questions I've got there. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Jim.
All right. Well, that will do it. There's the music. I just queued it up. So it is time for us to go. I want to thank everyone for being here on the show today, especially the people in the very engaging chat as usual, but also very special guest today, Angela Wheeler, Executive Director of the CO2 Coalition. Thanks so much. We will sure to have you on again. That was a lot of fun today. I want to thank our streaming partners, JumpScience.com, CFACT, that very same CO2 Coalition, Climate Depot, What's Up With That, and Heartland, UK, Europe. Thank you very much, Sterling. Thank you, Linnea. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Anthony Watts, who had to go right away. He couldn't stay till the very end. So We will all be here again because we're back in our regular routine next Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Please like, share, and subscribe. Bring people to watch this show. It's a lot of fun, and the more the merrier. That's all we have for today, and we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.